I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Tuesday, September the 12th. And I tell you, Monday was a big day in the bluegrass. I know I've been talking about it a lot, but it's not very often that somebody comes along and builds a new auction facility in the tens of millions of dollars and offers it up to the public. And I was able to be there for the grand opening of the Bluegrass Stockyards in Lexington, Kentucky, and it was quite a show. I tell you what, they had standing room only, big crowd, had a good run of cattle there, and it was really something to see. And enjoyed meeting a lot of people that watch the feeder flash regularly and depend on this for their market information. It's my pleasure to meet all of you there. Had a good opportunity to meet a lot of the big order buyers in the southeast and just everybody at the Bluegrass Stockyards and the management at the other stockyards. I got 7 locations in Kentucky, the Bluegrass Yards, and it was just really a good time, and enjoyed the whole weekend and the big day on Monday. But I promise after this feeder flash, for you competitors and everybody else, I'll start talking about something else. But it was really a big deal. But you look at the board on Monday, live cattle futures October contract was down 12 cents to end the day on Monday at 107.20. And you look out there in spring, we've got some light at the end of the tunnel there. April contract ended the day at 118.30. Feeder cattle in the October contract was up 92 cents at 149.35. So we knew we were coming into this week with a head of steam, mostly because your cattle feeders hung on and dug their heels in and refused to take anything less than steady on your fat cattle last week, and had a late day on Friday trade. And that was all because the board was able to hold strong and stay more than $1 higher on Friday, and that enabled these guys to get that. But if you look at our weighted average for last week's fat cattle trade in the 5 area feeding region, they only sold 47,400 head. That's about half what they need to sell in the 5 area there to keep their show list cleared out and stay current on things. You compare that 47,400 to another light week the previous week, which was 62,300 head, and the same week the prior year was 88,500 head. So did not get a good clearance of the show list. Although if you go by what the show lists were reported to be early this week, they were not a whole lot bigger. I've never really had much faith in the reportings of the show lists because, you know, they don't have to sell those cattle. They can sell more cattle than that. Why would it behoove your feedlots to really tell you how many cattle you got on the show list? I'm not sure everybody is kind of forefront with what they're doing there, and I've never really had a lot of faith in the listings of the show list, and it really doesn't really hinge on anything, and it never comes out to be exactly that anyway. So that's not a big deal. But your weighted average for last week's fat cattle trade on live steers, 104.92. That's up 26 cents from the previous week because we had a light trade and most of them were at the higher end at that 105. So ended up with a higher weighted average. You look at the dress steer weighted average, 166.13. That was up 42 cents compared to the previous week's weighted average. But you look at your feeder cattle markets, your real-time index on Beef Market Central based on an 800-pound steer, setting at 146.87 late on Monday. That was actually down just a smidge, down 17 cents, because late in the week last week, I mean, things were just going gangbusters, and we've got some really nice premium type sales late in the week on a Friday, and then you come in on a Monday and you've got really these high volume market sales, and it just was a little bit lower, but the market was a lot higher, and we talked about that. I told you last week on the cattle market summary for the week that your Monday big volume sales were likely to be a lot higher. They were. You look at Oklahoma City, they had a big run. People were reluctant to sell their cattle on a down market, and it may not even be any better than what they would have got because we had 2 or 3 weeks of big losses. But If you look at your feeders in Oklahoma City, 8,500 head. Didn't have a sale the previous Monday due to Labor Day, but compared to 2 weeks before, your feeder cattle were $3 to $6 higher. Calves were a lot higher, and really had a good sale there, and people were able to get a good market and sell quite a few cattle. Look at Joplin Regional Stockyards, similar type run, 8,300 head there. Compared to the 2 weeks before, feeders there were $2 to $7 higher. Calves were a lot higher. You know, it's really hard to call the calves because you don't get a comparable run, but we're going to get to the point where we have predominantly calves, and we'll be able to get a good following, a good test of what the calf market is. But they had some peewee calves in Joplin, and those were $5 to $10 higher. Like I said, we've got big wheat prospects in the southern plains, and guys are going to be looking for peewee calves to put out on those. They can grow those peewee calves, and then they can either sell them as lighter feeders, or they can keep those cattle and take them on to grass, or background them some on their own before they go into the feedlot. So when you buy those peewee calves, you got a whole lot of options, and you continue to have options on cattle up until the point you put them in the feedlot and shut the gate on them, and then your options are pretty much over. But we talked about the Bluegrass Stockyards in Lexington. Very interesting. They had auctioned off the right. It was a benefit auction, and sold the right to sell the first draft. And a lady there had bought that option to sell the first draft. I'm not for sure, but I heard she'd give about $7,500 in a benefit auction to sell the first draft at the new Bluegrass Stockyards. And it paid off for her big time. She sold 10 head of 1,000-pound steers, actually $9.99, but 1,000-pound steers, and they brought $2.11 a pound, and S&B order buyers bought those cattle, and that's a pretty good ticket. But I was saying, if I had the right to sell those the first draft there, the first draft would have been 8 pot loads. I would have made it happen somehow, but they may not have been that generous if it had exploited it that way. But had a good sale. The market was a lot higher. Of course, you didn't have anything to compare it to because they haven't had a sale since before the big fire in January of 16, but had a really good sale. Your markets were really up, and I'm not sure if the market was just that much better, or just a lot of excitement and a lot of people visiting there from other places, and seeing your order buyers kind of putting on a show for everybody because they had a standing room only crowd. But included in that, you can look at the video here on these steers at Lexington, which they had about 2,500 head on offer there. But I tell you guys, they sell load lots of yearling cattle in these stockyards in the southeast sometimes. And you look at 9 o'clock in the morning, they had 59 head of these good black steers. They're as good as you want to find anywhere. They may not be Valentine, Nebraska good. They may not be Ogallala, Nebraska good, but they're as good as you find basically anywhere in your 5-area feeding region that are real close to your feedlots, and is good enough to send anywhere. 59 head of them weighed 913, and you can see they're 145.85. Pretty good ticket on those cattle. They also had a Western Video Market. You could have seen that right here on DV Auction, just like you watched the Bluegrass Stockyards on DV Auction. But at the Western Video Market, it was held at the Haythorne Ranch there in Nebraska. Had a big get-together for that. A stick-out sale there for me was the Bledsoe Ranch. Some Red Angus calves there. 225 head of steer calves right off the cow. 450 pounders to come in late September. Now that's in South Burlington, Colorado, so on the east side there. But those calves ring the bell at $2.15 a pound. But that's your feeder flash for Tuesday.